Hi, my name is Kirsten Bannister, and I am the treasurer and the events coordinator chair for the Shoreline Special Needs PTA, soon to be the Special Education PTA. We're actually going to be changing our name this year. Our PTA supports caregivers of disabled and special education students, and we strive to create a community of support both with other caregivers and with a school district. You can find information about our district-wide PTA on Facebook, on Instagram, and also on our website, shorelinespecialneedspta.org. What our panel tonight wants to make sure is that you have your questions answered about how middle school education is the same and different from your elementary experience. This is a great time to have a student entering middle school because both of the middle schools are brand new. And this year, they've worked out a lot of the little things about having a new school. So I'm excited for you guys. I hope that you leave tonight feeling more connected to your new school and you have what you need to feel confident. We're going to be recording our meeting tonight and we'll upload the video to YouTube. We have a YouTube channel that's private. You wouldn't be able to find it there, but we'll have a link so that families that need to translate the video in their preferred language are able to. Because of this, we ask that you put your questions in the chat box and that you keep any questions or comments as non-identifying as possible. Please don't use your child's name, their age, what school they attend, or what teachers they currently have, or any specific diagnosis that your child might have. You can talk to your schools one-on-one, but in a group setting like this, we just can't, we can't make things private. So please respect your privacy. I'd love to introduce our panel. I'm actually going to have them introduce kind of themselves. And if you can just identify maybe what grade and what school your child currently attends at middle school. So I will start. My name's Kirsten Bannister again, and I have an 8th grader at Einstein. Diana?
Hi, I'm Diana, and I have a 6th grader at Kellogg.
And is Annabelle here? Oh, yes, I see you. Oh, Annabelle, I don't think we can hear you.
I think she wrote in the blog she's struggling with audio. I'll message her just in case.
Okay. Heather, would you like to introduce Annabelle?
Yeah, hi, I'm Heather Hyatt. I'm the principal at Kellogg, and Annabelle is joining us. She has a 8th grader at Kellogg.
Excellent. And then Heather and Nyla, do you want to introduce yourselves?
I can continue, and then do you want me to introduce my staff that I have with me?
Yeah, that would be great.
So again, I'm Heather. I'm the principal at Kellogg, and I have Rachel Norman joining me. She's the school psychologist at Kellogg.
Great.
And I don't think Diana Cruz is here yet, but if she comes, I'll introduce her. She's a teacher in our special ed department.
Perfect. And Nyla?
Hey everyone, I'm Nyla Fritz and I'm the principal at Einstein Middle School. Nice to see you all.
And I just wanted to recognize, we do have Becca Anderson here. She is the head of student services in our the administration over the district, as well as Dr. Scott Irwin. So thanks for joining us as well. Okay, so I'm going to turn the time over to Heather and Nyla, and they're going to start talking about middle school special education.
Sure, we can share, and Rachel, please feel free to jump in on some of the slides. I'm just going to show the presentation. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen.
And forgive us, we're a little rusty after being off of Zoom totally for a year.
Right, it used to
Never been so happy to be rusty at something. So
yeah, I don't mind at all. All right. And so middle school directed studies or special education, it probably looks a little bit different. It has some different names than you're used to if you're just coming up from the elementary. So our goal is to tell you what the names are and what the different programs are within this department, so that you can kind of fit where your student might be, and you have a chance to ask us more direct questions about the different programs we have to offer. So to start out, I can present English. We have 3 different sort of paths within English. The first would be a team taught English. And if you're not familiar with that, that is a gen ed teacher of English. And they're kind of as the content specialist. And they have a partner and they team teach that class. So there's 2 teachers in the room. And we put 1/3 or less students who have IEP services in English in that classroom. And so between the 2 teachers and that smaller class size, they can serve all of the minutes within that general ed environment. We have that in 7th and 8th grade. In 6th grade, we also have it, but it's called Team Taught Humanities. Humanities is a 2-period block, so it's English and social studies. So the 6th graders have a team teacher, so they have the gen ed and a special ed teacher within their humanities to serve their English minutes. The English skills class is a class that is smaller and it's taught by a special ed teacher, so there's not a gen ed teacher in there. All students in the class have reading and writing support on their IEPs. It's around 2 to 3 grade levels below the general education teacher, and often we have a para-educator in that classroom. So it depends on your students' needs and where their levels are to determine which class they fit best in. I can just take this one too if you want, because math is basically the same. We have math 1, 2, 3. Math 1 is 6th grade. It sort of goes in order, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So we have a team taught general ed math teacher with a special ed teacher together in the classroom serving the math minutes. If they are 2 to 3 grade levels below in math, we have what we call math skills. So that's taught by a special ed teacher and it's a smaller class size. Nyla or Rachel, did you want to add anything about those 2 classes? Programs?
No, I think, there is a mirror to those, and our students have gotten so used to, some classes have 2 teachers, some classes have 1 teacher. It's been a really smooth transition for our students, and there isn't a feel of that there's something different in there. Some classes have 1 and some classes have 2.
Yeah, and honestly, all students benefit from 2 teachers being present.
Yes. Do you want me to take this one, Heather?
Sure, take it.
So we have social skills and BLS, behavior learning support program. And while it is a program, we also want to make sure that we know that all of our students, our hope is to have full inclusion as much as possible. So the students that are served through this have social skills, social emotional skills, and or behavior minutes on their IEPs. And depending on the level of support, a student may be in just a social skills class. They may have push-in support. They may, I apologize, my dog is drinking water right next to me very loudly. If you can hear that, that's what it is. Apologies. And also students who have social and or study skill support. Some of that can be met during our advisory period, which at Einstein is called Pride and at Kellogg is called Roundtable. In this program, in these classes, our students work on social interactions, their emotional and behavioral regulation, self-advocacy skills, and they are supported by both our special education teachers as well as our building behavior techs.
You want to just take study skills?
Yeah. Study skills is also similar. We have a lot of students who have study skills organization on their IEPs, and what that looks like at the secondary level really depends on the kiddo and their specific needs. It can look like a full period of study skills. It can look like receiving that support for those skills during the advisory period. It can also look like push-in and pull-out support that happens at various times with a directed studies teacher or with one of our techs throughout the week. But our IEP case managers are the ones that help to ensure that that our students are receiving those services and the support they need that fits them. There is no one cookie cutter that says, these are the exact skills that this student needs, and therefore this is what it is. We really try to cater the needs of the student and what the IEP recommends and how we serve them creatively in this new place with 6 period days and a homeroom versus their classrooms in their elementary schools.
You want me to take that one?
You go, girl.
Okay, so here's some more sort of acronyms. At Kellogg, we call it our STRIDE program. At Einstein, it's called the LIFE. So this is our self-contained program. So they receive their services in a self-contained classroom. We do, so it's functional academic skills, adaptive and self-help skills, social emotional, communication, fine motor, gross motor. And then really we have a very active elective program that they then push out for our electives such as art, robotics, we have STEM classes, PE. So they're getting all those opportunities for as much conclusion as we possibly can. And then some students also attend skills classes. So they might only be in STRIDE or LIFE for, some life skills or some adaptive, but then they go out for an English or a reading skills. So again, it really just matches what their needs are. They can have a few classes of STRIDE and then a few classes of skills. All right, so those are sort of the programs within to serve our minutes. And then we wanted to make sure you understand, there's usually a lot of questions on IEP reviews and special education reevaluations. Rachel, you want to do this part?
I would love to. I knew you were going to ask.
I know, I can't see. Serious.
So IEPs are annually updated. So you can expect communication from your student's IEP manager roughly around the time that their IEP was done this last school year. So if your student's IEP is coming up around this time next year, you'll also get an invite from either your Einstein or Kellogg IEP manager to do another update. And your IEP manager will coordinate the meeting with you. They'll gather the team together, review progress, go over any changes to goals, update accommodations, and make any other adjustments that the team agrees are important for your student to be successful and work towards those goals. But at any point in time, if there's any questions about your IEP and it's not time for your IEPs to be updated, reach out to your student's case manager and you will know who that is. There will be communication at the beginning of the year, so you know who your point of contact is, who your student's case manager is, and they're happy to talk at any point. So you don't need to wait until your annual review for any sort of conversation. It's important that if you're confused about your student's IEP or how their services are being delivered, or if you'd like to think about accommodations a little bit differently since they're in middle school, that you feel free to reach out and have that conversation as soon as possible. And then every student who is on an IEP is reevaluated every 3 years in order to look at a continued need and eligibility for special education services. So the school psychologist at either Einstein or Kellogg will reach out if it is time for your students' 3-year reevaluation. And we'll talk through any areas that we need to include as part of that reevaluation. We typically include all of the things that your student currently qualifies in, and then have a little bit of a chat if there's additional concerns that we need to look at. And after the evaluation is completed, the IEP team will meet to go over the data from that evaluation and use a lot of that data to update your student's IEP at that time. But similar to the annual IEP review, if you have questions at any point in time or want to start the reevaluation process at any point in time, reach out to the school psychologist and we're happy to have that conversation, discuss concerns, and make a plan moving forward.
And I'll just pop in right there because Kristen, I see you wrote something in the chat that I want to make sure everyone sees, which is, again, language and how do we make sure that the language translates from elementary into middle school easily. The case manager is the teacher that manages the IEP. In elementary school, that's typically the resource room teacher. Same thing. It's just we have more of them at the secondary level, and so they are assigned throughout.
Thank you. Yes, I get stuck in middle school language. Sorry.
Thank you for pointing that out. All right. So as Nyla kind of said, there are a lot more of us at the middle school. There are a lot more IP case managers, administrators, counselors. So who are your contacts? And I am going to be dropping the link to this presentation into the chat, so you can have all of these resources. They're also available on both of our websites. So we have who our directed studies are, who is in charge of our STRIDE program, and additional specialists that you might need to have contact information for. So we have it for both Kellogg and for Einstein. And again, I'll drop all of that in the chat so you won't have to quickly write that down. And I will stop sharing.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So we asked for any questions that anyone had before the meeting. So a couple things that I think might be nice. I'm going to ask a couple of those questions. The one other thing that I would say is, Heather or Nyla, can you talk a little bit about Canvas? Because what our parents in elementary school have been using is a different system. And I think, quite honestly, Canvas is magic as a parent, because you can monitor what is going on in your kids' classes in a really different way.
Thanks for asking that question. And Kirsten, I will say that, you know, I try to find any kind of silver lining in the pandemic that we can find. And I will say that our sort of more uniform use of Canvas has been one of those. So Canvas is our learning management system, which is sort of the one-stop shop. All of your students, you can see their grades, and for the majority of classes, you can see what the work that is being done each day, what the learning targets are. You can monitor. It really depends on, most of our teachers are using it in a fairly uniform way. There's still some outliers, and we're trying to norm that. But it is a great one-stop shop. And the other great thing about it is allows you to sit next to your student and teach them the advocacy skills and reinforce those, such as, oh, I see that you're missing this assignment here. Why don't you email your teacher right now via Canvas? Let me help you, to kind of coach them in that gaining more independency. But yes, I think Canvas is an absolutely phenomenal way that our students, families, and educators are able to communicate with one another.
I can't say enough great as not having to get in there and talk to the teacher and really being able. So I signed up, unfortunately, twice. So I get, as a parent, you'll get notifications about when things are turned in, and in my case, I have it on 2 emails, so I get double the fun there. So IEPs, so you talked a little bit about this, but are IEPs any different in elementary versus middle school, or the same?
Rachel, you want to take that one?
They're pretty similar. The things that change a little bit from elementary to the middle school level, because we don't do the resource room type model at the middle school level, the amount of minutes might look a little different in how your student is in their special education classes. And then that will vary whether they're in a skills class versus a team taught class. But in terms of the big picture structure of having goals, having accommodations, getting progress reports throughout the year, that was one thing I didn't mention. Every time a report card goes out, a progress report about your child's IEP goals will come right around the same time. So that is 4 times a year. But in general, the IEPs themselves are structured really pretty much the same. We use the same system at the secondary level as the elementary does to document IEPs and, write up everything. So it should look pretty familiar. Just the big change is we don't do the resource room model, like I said. So minutes might shift and look a little bit different based on what your child's needs are.
Perfect. One of the questions that parents might be concerned about is transportation. What does transportation look like for middle school versus elementary school? Any difference?
I can talk about general, and then it really depends on the kiddo. So in general, our transportation is the same. We have our neighborhood buses, and we also have kids who walk, who ride their bikes to school, and those who are dropped off and picked up by adults, by their adult caregivers. And we also have specific buses for our students who need more specialized transportation. And there are transition meetings that happen between elementary and secondary schools to make sure that those students who will continue to need specialized transportation, the door-to-door, have that set up when school starts. So please know that our department heads and case managers are in touch with the elementary school and already in the process of ensuring that that can happen smoothly.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because registration is happening right now, right, for fifth graders. Who helps the special education kiddos register, and like what happens from now until the end of the year, kind of? I think you mentioned it, but I think being maybe more formal, because that for me felt, I was really happy to know that meetings happened and you weren't.
You want me to take that one too?
Sure.
You can take that one, and I can tell what behind the scenes what I do too.
So the the department heads, which I am one of the department heads at Kellogg, and the Einstein school psychologist, Nyla, correct me if I'm wrong, but Catherine is one of the department heads over at Einstein. We have met with all of the feeder elementaries for our respective sides of the district and had conversations with the resource room teachers about every single student who is coming to us with an IEP. They've given us not just, what the students' goals are and what areas they qualify in, but they've also given us some helpful information about many students, about what some of the things are that they like to help get them engaged, if they are going to need an opportunity, and if we're able to, fingers crossed, offer the opportunity to let students come in, small groups of students who might need that extra time to orient themselves to the building before the hordes of middle schoolers come in. So we've had that conversation already, and we continue to talk throughout the spring, especially with IEPs that might be happening after that meeting, which there are many since it is still the middle of March. Resource room teachers are working hard. We continue to have conversations about any new students who might have just recently qualified for an IEP, or students who are currently on an IEP, and maybe some changes have happened. But and I can't speak for Einstein, but the Kellogg process is we have a big master spreadsheet of all of our students who are on IEPs that our counselors access, and our counselors are the ones who are responsible for building schedules. And so as a result of those meetings with the feeder elementary schools, we've gone through on that spreadsheet and marked which classes each student needs to take in accordance with their IEPs. And then in the August, before school starts, we go through every single one of our IEP students' schedules to make sure that they are scheduled correctly, so that we haven't, because people make mistakes and sometimes things change. And so we make sure we do a double check before day one of school to make sure that students are scheduled correctly so that their IEPs are met from the second they walk in the door.
And I would add, there's one little step in there after we get what they need, then we build the classes around what the incoming class needs. And then just from my lens, in the master schedule, we place those classes first before any other classes to maximize their opportunity to engage in all the electives.
Yeah, and then I also see some question in the chat around helping kids just navigate the middle school. Kirsten, did you want to hold off on those, Kirsten? Or are you fine with me jumping in with some of those right now?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say one other thing. Like, I definitely, in my experience, I got a call both years saying, hey, we're going through the schedule, we're gonna have to make a quick change. Because when do you get your schedule when you're in middle school?
Like usually around the week before school starts.
Right. So I got a call before that saying, hey, we need to make this change. Your kid needs to take these things. we're really wondering, you know, if she really wanted to take drama, but it doesn't work out because she needs to take this. So what other ways can we help her be successful, or what other things are you interested in? And I was, you know, happy and surprised, and it was lovely. So.
Well, and I think now's a good time. I would just want to say, you know, we just jumped into kind of all the nuts and bolts. We are so committed to making sure that your kids have a good transition and to really trying to cater to their needs. And so just know that, and please, we want to be in partnership with you. I see a couple of questions around how do they navigate this big building? We have these awesome orientation programs at Einstein. It's called Web. I believe it will be Web at next year at Kellogg too, where the day before school starts, all of our kiddos come in, they get to see all of their classes, walk the school. We are so receptive on the first day to understand that everyone's lost, and kind of normalizing the fact that everyone kind of needs help. And we have our 8th grade student leaders, several of whom are students who have IEPs, who are there to support our kids, make sure everyone is transitioning. And we also have students that come, we have had groups of students and individual students come and tour the building ahead of time over the summer, where it's low stress, kind of seeing where their classrooms are, walking what the day would be like. Our goal is to have all of our kids have as many positive touches with the school campus as possible prior to school starting. The last 2 years have kind of been hard in that, really hard. But we've still made it work, and we're hoping to continue to make it even stronger this coming year.
Yeah, I mean, that completely happened for my child both times. She came in the spring, she walked through with her pride teacher. She was able to do a walkthrough, and then she did it again in the fall. So very accommodating. Definitely reach out to the school and let them know when they get back in from summer break. So I think it would be fun to maybe ask some questions to some of the parents. And then I promise we'll get to everyone's questions. But what I would love to know from, well, maybe we'll start out with Diana, is, let's see, ooh, I had it right here. Sorry, where is it? Okay, what are you surprised about, and how did you support your kiddo? Because I know Diana was at this meeting, just like all of our 5th grade families last year. So what were you surprised about, and what went well? And yes.
Yeah, that's a good question. But first I wanted to echo what Rachel is saying, and also what Heather and Nyla are saying, is that the schools are very responsive to things like, oh, I would like to talk about accommodations. Can I call an IEP meeting, or can I have a reevaluation meeting? So I think one thing I want to say is just how important it is to take them at their word, to say, when they say reach out, let us know what you need. So I think that is really important. Sometimes as parents, I think we sometimes feel, oh, I don't want to bother them. It's the beginning of the school year, or they've got a lot on the plate. They're dealing with the pandemic, as we all are. But it is really important to know that they are there to help support your students, and to reach out and to say things like, okay, I know it feels like a lot saying, I would like an IEP meeting. And but it is so helpful to get everyone talking and on the same page. So I would say don't worry about asking for what you need, the support that your kids need. And your original question, though, was what surprised me. And one thing that surprised me is it seems like such a small leap. It's 1 grade, but realizing for my kid that at age 12, it is so developmentally appropriate for him to take more ownership of his education. So, and it surprised me how I mean, I knew it was important, but it surprised me how important, how necessary it was. And of course, I know my child is amazing, but it was still just amazing how he flourished when I specifically said, I am not your advocate. I am your ally, but I will support you in what you need and what you want to be successful. So let's have an IEP meeting because there are some things that aren't working. So we need to bring the whole team together and figure out what it is that we need to do. But instead of, I tend to be I'm a teacher. So I tend to be, these are the things you need. These are the accommodations you can get. This is how we're going to proceed. And I had to take a step back and say, what is important to you? What is it that you want? What are your goals? Oftentimes I think in IEP meetings, excuse me, my heat's on really high, so I need to turn it down a little bit. I think oftentimes in IEP meetings as parents, we're used to saying, we're used to having the case manager of the IEP meeting say, okay, here are the goals and here are the accommodations we've had that have worked. And, but they're also very open to saying to the parents, okay, you're the expert on your kids, so what do you think can help? But I think what we're less used to, and I think it's so important in middle school, is for students to take the lead on their IEP and say, these are the goals that are important to me. Once I listened to Liam and said, okay, what are the goals that are important to you? It's not what was on his IEP. It's not what other people thought were important, but he had very concrete goals. He wanted to work on completing his assignments. He was recognizing that he was not completing his assignments. He was not getting an education to his satisfaction. And he was not accessing that education. So he set the goal. And then we brainstormed around what accommodations would work. What did he feel like he needed to reach those goals? And that it was one of the, I'm not saying that IEP meetings are bad or anything like that, but it was one of the most productive IEP meetings because I wasn't leading it. The teachers weren't leading it. I had done probably hours of work ahead of time with my child. I'm like trying to get not to say his name, with my child to create a document ahead of time before the IEP meeting, because you've all seen IEPs, right? There's like all the stuff that they need to be legally compliant. And then the stuff about the goals and the accommodation is buried within that. So I just took the goals and the accommodations out and said, okay, the rest of the stuff, thankfully, the very proficient and competent case managers have to deal with that. And that's not our worry. And then we just worked for days ahead of the IEP meeting that we had called on the goals and the accommodations. And then they did the work of putting it so that it was still legally compliant. But anyway, I can't stress enough how pleasantly surprised I was by my child's thorough, not just buy-in. I think when we talk about buy-in, we're talking about here's something that we set that we want to bring our kid into, but more engagement. He was taking a leadership role in this, saying, these are the goals. This is my education. This document is to help me with my education. So having him set his IEP goals, and they have to reword it. The case manager has to reword it in a way that is compliant to the structure of the IEP, and that's fine. But they were still his words, they were still his goals, they were still his needs being addressed. And it was just magical.
Thank you. Annabelle, are you able to use your sound yet?
Can you hear me?
Yes. So same
Okay.
question. What was surprising, and how have you supported your kiddo?
Okay, I have to say my kiddo, he is getting a lot of help, and I would say it takes a village and it takes a school to help raise him. So thank you first and foremost to all his teachers and teacher assistants, and to Heather. And I feel I'm truly humbled because without the school structure, it would be difficult for me to raise my son. As you know, I'm a working mama, and my husband works as well. So trying to juggle all that without the structure of a school would be impossible, and I'm very thankful for that. My son goes to a special education. He is really being in a group of special needs children, and he has a way of communicating with us. He's nonverbal, and the focus of the attention that they give him is amazing, since trying to communicate with a nonverbal child really takes a lot of, the rapport, all those nonverbal cues. And I hats off to his teachers and to all of you who might have been around him. I have to say the patience and the focus on the curriculum that they had to give my child is really very tailored to his abilities, which I feel would be different for every child of what their current situation is. And for that really helps us also share what we do in the home is continuing over, is spilling over to the school environment. And he does PT, PE in the school, his speech sessions. And we also provide him with outside therapies outside the school. So we communicated with his IEP that whatever works in school, we will try and carry it over to in our home environment. And that also we communicated that with the outside clinic that does help with his therapies. And they will also continue with those things. And that's what has been very special, because we communicated that in his IEP, and they really work with us. The school work with us as parents. You can only imagine, as we have our children in school, they will spend longer time in the school days to be in the school environment. And without that tool set in their IEP, there won't be enough guidance without our input. So we shared with them what we have observed in the home environment, what he had picked up from the school. So we continue that. So this open communication between the educators really helps us, and we tailor it down. And if you are bringing in your children to the school environment in this new grade, there will be enough resources and tools that can help you navigate this new chapter in their lives. And I would say that the school has been very, very helpful and flexible with my son's needs. And it is truly amazing that I would say being an educator is a special talent, because it does give you all these different layer of patience, being informative. You will be acting really the beacon of hope for these children. And one thing that really amazed me is to observe my child transition from our years of making them learn at home, which is very tough for my son, because he thinks that this is a box, it's a screen, and I can't even touch it. He learns more in person, he's tactile. And so when he transitioned into the personal school environment where face-to-face communication happens and instruction occurred, he had really shown more of, his growth, his development. And then I would see in the communication notebook, it says, he had out of 6 questions, he gets 5 correct by using a switch. And it looks like he loves math. And we were very surprised that all these things are coming out, which even bloom better when he is in the school environment, the social skills. He practiced it a lot. He loves being with other children. He loves to be outside during the PE. So all these mobility, all these educational stuff, socialization, you name it, I have to say that the school environment in Kellogg, in his specific school year, has been truly relevant, helpful. And like I said, you have all the needed resource person. And if you have a question, don't be afraid to ask. They will guide you to the right person. And if you need more resources, our PTA program, there's a lot of things that you can really use. So it's truly look at it as a community, an extension, a family that would be there to support your child and you as a family. Because I feel my child has grown better. He bloomed in the school environment. So if you think about it, 365 days in a year, our children, most of those days will be in school. And of course, the way they learn, in my son's case, is not the same as other children. But I would have to say he has developed. And one of the things that I can take away is that socialization is key. And really the patience and the mindset that their teacher had to bring into the learning environment with his special needs situation is truly powerful and really amazing. So hats off to the educational team. Thank you so much. I personally can say, if you bring your kid to Kellogg, to this middle school, it is a great environment. There's always flexibility, and you have a lot of support. And please use those tools because it will help to the success of your kids' education. Thank you.
I loved that. That was so great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I was popping into the chat and I noticed a couple of little questions. So I thought I would answer this question kind of in a different way. So one of my big concerns, just like you, was my kid was going to get lost. That probably came from my personal perspective. I got lost when I was a younger kid, right? So all the kids get a map. Right. And so one of the things when my kiddo took a tour before school, they marked on that map, first period, second period, and they tracked how to get to all of those classes. The bell rings just the same way as elementary school. So, and the way that it's organized, like you're going to know where those lunches are. I think that it's not as much. That's what surprised me. I was really concerned that my kiddo was just going to get lost and not know where to go and when is lunch and blah, blah, blah. And she managed it. And there were kids in the hallway that would help if she bumped into anyone, where am I? And she said that happened quite a bit, the first couple of weeks, but all kids have that map the first week and it's like a crinkly mess. Like all kids, not special education, like all kids have that crinkly mess of a map by the end of the week. And after about a week, they get it. So I would say, don't worry about that. And definitely don't bring your own, like probably I did, right? Like, how are you going to figure this out? Because I had a hard time. I would just say, you're going to do amazing. And all kids feel the same way.
Can I add to that? because my kid took longer than a week to get adjusted to find his way around. Rachel's smiling. She knows. So
I still see him wandering.
I know. He claims he knows his way around now, but anyway, so I would say that I think that there are a lot of measures in place, but I think it's that individualized measure that's so important, which is why it's so important to reach out, because you know your kids, you know what they need. I knew that my kid was going to need more than one tour before school and a map that he was going to destroy or lose, not on purpose, but so there were a few individual things that I had to ask for, like he was really, I'm just thinking, he was really upset when he couldn't find his watch. He'd left his watch at home. He couldn't find it in the morning. So, and I knew he relied on the watch to get to class on time, or as on time as he could, to track time. So I sent an email to Rachel and said, does anyone have an extra watch you could borrow? Because he's going to need that. And Rachel was like, yep, I'll send someone to the car and we'll get him a watch. And then he ended up realizing that the clocks on the walls were everywhere. And then he just hadn't noticed them before because he was using his watch, and it turned out to be okay. But there are little things like that. I think I asked for a laminated map at the
I think we laminated his schedule.
Yeah, right.
And I think we did because the schedules print out super teeny tiny, and so they're really hard to read. And so oftentimes for a lot of our students on IEP, that bigger version of a schedule with things, because there's also a lot of extra words on there that they don't need. So sometimes I spend a few days at the beginning of the school year retyping up, and our wonderful librarian assistant at Kellogg laminates them, and we make sure that they are more accessible.
Yes, the laminated schedule was everything. So every kid is going to be different. And that's why the IEP is individualized, and that's why the supports the schools provide are individualized. There's a lot of great structural things, but there's individual things that the school can do to help your kids be successful. And then if I could go, there was something I wanted to answer about the what surprised me question. Oh, I know. It was interesting because I was at the transition meeting last year, and I remember I got a lot more information than I had gotten from the elementary school. And I think it's just because the elementary school doesn't really know what's going to happen in the middle school. So these transition meetings are so helpful in giving information. And if your kid is in a self-enclosed program, for me anyway, the messaging was there are no self-enclosed programs in the middle school. That's just a program that was in the elementary school. So I didn't take the steps to make sure that my child had I actually did try very hard to get a reevaluation, but during pandemic, it was hard to do a reevaluation assessment. So, but I didn't push it as hard as I could have because I hadn't gotten that information. I got that information at the transition meeting. So because of that, then I called a reevaluation meeting. And then, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are structural changes happening to dismantle segregated programs, but those things are slow moving. So if you feel that your child would be best served in a fully inclusive setting, then those reevaluations need to happen. And the other thing I was surprised by is that my child is very relationship focused. He loves making relationships. So I thought he would be able to form those relationships But because he was returning to his neighborhood school after being gone for 6 years, so he didn't know Kellogg was a completely new school to him. It was a completely new group of children. Everyone was coming off of pandemic. There was a lot of factors, and it's middle school, right? It's a developmentally awkward period of time. I had trouble making friends when I was in middle school, and I had gone to school with all those kids throughout elementary school. It's been really hard. I will just be really honest. It's been much harder than I had expected for him to make friends. And it's nothing a social skills class would fix, because it's not that my child lacks the ability to make friends. And it's nothing that the school's doing. It's a very unfortunate situation. So that has just been really, honestly, very hard.
Oh, Diana. I mean, yes, it is a hard couple of years, I would say, for sure. One of the things that came up as a question was around lunchtime. So one thing that Einstein has done that my kiddo really loves is they play a movie in the general area that kiddos eat lunch with I'm surely all those chairs are 6 feet apart and no one's like getting close, right? But it gives an opportunity for kids to have something to do, and my kid has loved it, right? And she'll come home and say, oh my God, like last week they were showing Cars, right? And so they're able to have something to do that doesn't seem awkward, right? Like I think my kid really needs a little bit of space after being in the hallways are crowded and they're pretty loud, I would say. Like that was kind of a little bit different, going from you move as a class and you go on either side, right? Like one class will pass the other class in elementary school, and really kids are going in their own directions. And so it has felt loud and I think overwhelming a little bit at times for my kiddo, but she enjoys that movie time just to sit back and like relax for a minute. So
I'm sorry.
is hard.
That is actually that. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Kirsten, because I forgot something really big I wanted to say, and that is the main thing. One of the main things my child asked at the IEP meeting was, he said exactly that. He's so overwhelmed by lunch. It's so loud. There's so many people. It's overwhelming to him. I mean, with any kids with sensory stuff, it's just really overwhelming. And he asked for a quiet space for lunch. And he said, the library is great when it's open, but it's not always open. And the outdoor space is a courtyard. So it's an enclosed courtyard, and it just magnifies the noise he feels. And and he also feels the windows are around so that people can look in, and it feels like a fishbowl. So there's a lot. He was actually really, really clear about why he was feeling overwhelmed by those spaces. And the school's so responsive, but they are just saying there is no space because there is no quiet space set aside for students, because there needs to be staff and there just isn't the staff available. And so he just told me yesterday, he said, Mom, the library has been closed for the last 4 days because of testing. And so students who haven't finished their standardized testing go to the library, which means it's closed at lunch to the rest of the students. And I said, what did you do? And he said, I've been finding a space in the hallway and falling asleep. They're trying to sleep there because it's so overwhelming. So my kid's sitting on the floor in the hallway at lunch trying to sleep, because it's just like, that's his his coping mechanism to have that space to himself is just to try to sleep.
Mm.
And so that's one of those structural things that really needs to be addressed. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't know how to.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I, Dinah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I know that you brought that to our attention, and it really does come with, like, if there's 2 staff members and 350 kids, we can't leave them. It does come down to staffing, but we do have some hope. There's I don't know if you saw a group of PTA Shoreline, I mean, some from Kellogg, but I think it's throughout Shoreline, PTA members who joined this mental health group, trying to find ways to support the mental health of our students, for all students. And I think they got around like 70.
It did.
Yeah, like it was massive turnout. Like, yes, how can I help? And now that we're able to open to volunteers, we suggested come and staff a room that is a quiet space. And so we're looking now just for facilities and inviting, I'm going to invite some parents in who can just, if they're a volunteer, then they're cleared to sit in a group, you know, with 10 kids and show a movie, or just let them be on their laptops in silence or read. So we've had forward movement now that we can actually bring in more supports to help us, because we've been kind of cut off from any of the amazing support from our community. And so we are so thankful and excited about that change.
That's awesome. I think I want to switch gears back to maybe some of the questions that have come in to the chat here. So around clubs, Nyla, do you want to talk about clubs?
Yes, yes, yes. Can kids join clubs? Yes. Can they be in sports? Yes. If your kiddo needs supports to attend those, let us know and we work to get those supports. We have students who are participating in wrestling right now with support, who have been in our school plays when we had that, which we don't this year. So the answer is yes. And what we just need is the desire for your kiddo, and we encourage it. And we have our staff that are regularly encouraging clubs, and the clubs at the middle level are student driven clubs that they want, they get to create. And our case managers and our teachers work really hard to kind of tap into the interest of our kids and say, what might you be interested in, so that we are not just, you know, in this school day, but also that everyone gets involved in our community. So anything after school that is available to students is available with support to your students should they need the support.
Can you talk a little bit about, so what one of the things I think that was kind of confusing about after school, so firstly, can 6th graders participate in clubs, or can they participate in sports? Because I think the rules are different for 6th and 7th and 8th.
They can participate in clubs, and we have, this year was our first year, but we had some cross country at Einstein. I'm not sure if they did that at Kellogg too. I think so. And then also for track, we're going to have 6th grade track. We're sort of limited by space to having the other winter sports for our 6th graders, in addition to 7th and 8th. But we really want as many of our kiddos to turn out for those fall and spring sports as possible.
Awesome.
And I would say it's at the 6th grade, it's an intramural. So they're competing against, like Kellogg's competing against Einstein, and they're competing against themselves, just because we don't have any schools in our district that are, or not our district, what is it, our league, that have 6th grade competing.
Some of the clubs that are super fun, I mean, I know at Einstein, they have pizza and books. We haven't been able to eat pizza this year, but that's one of the clubs. So they talk about books that they're reading. They have like a cosplay one, I think now, and they have magic, and they have like, there are so many interesting clubs that are after school. And then there's also hang time, right? Which is if your kiddo just wants to hang out with his friends or her friends after school, then it's at hang time, which is separate, right? Or than the clubs.
Hang time is the umbrella, and within hang time they operate a couple of clubs like sports club, and then we also have other clubs that kids go to outside of the hang time area.
Right. And so how transportation works back, right, for special education kids, it would just be probably not there's not probably a special education bus that goes after, but if your kiddo is riding a regular bus, they'd be bused back to your home school, your elementary school that you went to. So that was something new.
And we want all of our kids, we would much rather, Heather, I'll speak for you. I would rather have the problem of finding staffing for everyone after school to have as many kids as possible stay after school in clubs. We want them there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's see if there are any other, okay, so does Kellogg have a peer mentor program, or does Einstein have a peer mentor program?
At Einstein, it's called Web. And it is where our 8th graders are mentors for our incoming 6th graders, and they're matched up at the beginning of the year in small groups. And it is a combination of a leadership program for our 8th graders and a mentorship program for our 6th graders. And Web's coming to Kellogg.
Yeah, we just called it Leadership Academy, but now we're calling it Web. And so we're doing the same thing. We also had a peer mentor program back in our old building before the pandemic. It's a smaller mentor program with some specific mentors set up for students. So we're hopeful to bring that back too.
There's a question here. It says, my son is participating in safety patrol. Is there anything similar to that? Any opportunities for 6th graders, or is kind of is there any opportunities for 6th graders like that? Or does that happen in 8th grade?
We don't have a safety patrol program at the middle level.
No, I mean, I guess what the question would be.
Leadership opportunity, or?
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah.
Yeah, there's we have ASB, so our student leadership, and we have 6th grade senators. So 6th graders who are interested in joining our leadership program, they can run for an ASB senator and get involved in that way.
Perfect. What about co-taught humanities that serve high cap? I think there are a couple of high cap questions here, and cohorts. We have a lot of kiddos that are called twice exceptional, right? That are in a high cap program that also have special education needs.
And that's where we look at you want to go ahead?
I would just say I have several twice exceptional students that are within our high cap cohort of humanities. And then that's when they would work with the IEP manager to see if there are English minutes needing, how can we get those served, either through roundtable or in another fashion. But if they chose the high cap services, they would be in the high cap cohort of humanities.
And that's where it just really depends on where the student's IEP minutes are within that. A student may have ELA, may have reading and writing minutes, they may have social emotional, they may have math. So it depends on where those minutes are. But we have, I could tell you, we have not had enough students to have who are twice exceptional to have a high cap co-taught cohort. The minutes have typically been in different areas.
Here's a great one. What are some general accommodations that are common? What is an accommodation that you see a lot of in an IEP?
How about we give that to Rachel or Diana Cruz? She just arrived. She's one of our teachers at Kellogg. So either Rachel or Diana, you could say, what accommodations do you see a lot?
Diana, I'll let you do that one. I've talked a lot.
We see accommodations that can vary anywhere from, I think the most common is small group for like testing purposes, or there's also breaking down assignments into manageable parts. There is making sure for understanding whether it's the directions or it's the content material. And then proximity is a good one that we like to use so that our teachers know whether the student prefers to be more to the front of the room, closer to the teacher, or, not. So those are just some of the more common ones that we see. But like an IEP is for any kid. So no matter what the student is, we can always make an accommodation to support them and their needs and where they're at.
Thank you. Well, I don't think I see very many other questions in here, and I feel like all the questions that I came with were answered. All right, any last minute thoughts from Heather or Nyla?
I would just say thank you for coming. We're eager to meet your students and meet you. So hopefully you feel supported and reach out as needed. We're here to do that.
And I'll echo the same comments and just, I hope you heard from the parents and also from us. We want to be in partnership with you. Call us, call the case manager. I think there can be a little bit of an intimidating factor, especially when you enter that first IEP and all of a sudden there's IEP meeting and all of a sudden there's 6 teachers or 7 teachers and a counselor and a case manager and an administrator. It just means there's all these people that want to love on your kid and support them. And so we really, truly want to be in partnership with you. Reach out.
I would agree. I think that the school has been amazing for my child and for me personally as well. Nyla, I love you. And let's see. So I just wanted to say, on behalf of the special needs PTA, this is what we do. Like, we want to make connections with parents to each other and to the school district. We are a full district PTA, which means that we support preschool, elementary, middle, high school, and transition students and their caregivers, really more their caregivers, and it rolls down to their students. So if you have any questions, feel free to email us, SSNPTA. And Nanda, will you put that in the chat, our Gmail account, please? You can feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to have you join us and lock arms with us. We so appreciate everyone that came tonight. I hope that you feel like you got your questions answered, and I'm excited for your 5th graders going into 6th grade. Those schools are beautiful, and there's so many fun opportunities there, truly. Such a supportive staff. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Thank you so much.